Everybody, we'll call this meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Super. Okay. First item up, do we approve the previous meeting minutes from March 25th? Very good, approved. Okay, so we'll start down to new business. Do we have somebody here from 472 Rolling Road? Okay, and my understanding is you were here before. It's just a matter of showing us tree protection fencing?
Yes. I believe you guys have the revised plans.
Mm-hmm.
So, you need to speak into oh, sorry. There you go. So yeah, I believe you guys have the revised plans. So we added tree protection along the back property, in front of the trees and about outside of the limits of disturbance.
Could you move that?
If you put your drawing down on the board, then we'll be able to see it. Perfect. That's great. That's very helpful.
Okay. So you can see at the back, yeah, the back property line, we have the tree protection, and also coming in off the entrance of the driveway, there's tree protection there. And I'd like to note that you could see right here, these trees there. It's noted that we're going to be transplanting them to that location. So there's two small trees that are getting transplanted. So we're actually not removing any trees. Shouldn't be disturbing any trees, and the two that are in the way of the access area are getting transplanted. Okay. The engineer also, in addition to putting all the trees and locating, defining the size and the species of the trees, he also has all the drip lines of the trees noted on the plan as well. Okay. So I hope this satisfies what we need this time.
Yeah.
So we can start digging the pool.
Yeah, I'm sure.
All right.
No, thank you. Any questions from anyone? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Good luck to you.
That was exciting. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. 706 Church Road.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Dave Fiorello from Omni and Jonathan Alderson from Jonathan Alderson Landscape Architects. We are here on behalf of the Gaspari family, who are proposing some improvements to their existing house. Right now, the site is roughly an acre and a half, a little bit less than 2 acre site at the corner of Church Road and Abrams Lane. There's an existing single-family dwelling in the back with a driveway in off of Church Road into a circular courtyard. The Gasparis are proposing a new detached garage and a revamped courtyard in the front of the house. Along with that, there's a new patio area in the back, and associated with that, there's some tree removals and replacements that I'm sure Jonathan can discuss. We show the trees to be removed on that first sheet. There are 12 total trees being removed. So doing the counts and the numbers, we have a requirement for 25 replacement trees. We do have a plan showing the new trees. We can discuss them if you wish, but on our third sheet here, we have our tree protection information. There are a row of, Jonathan, these are pines along the back property line, so we have tree protection along the back there. We have tree protection along the area here where some of the trees are being preserved. Some of the other trees that are on the site, one large maple tree, we have tree protection shown around there and tried avoid our work with our grading. We are proposing a small tree well to the high side of that where the grading is going. But I'm sure Jonathan here can discuss the trees that are coming out, why they're coming out, and we can go over the plan for the replacement trees.
That sounds great.
Okay, so I'm Jonathan Alderson, landscape architect. The first thing to mention is the largest tree that's coming out is a Norway maple. It's a 32-inch caliper Norway maple. And that's getting removed along with some other significant trees in the backyard. The reason the client would like those trees removed is they want a play lawn for the kids, and they want to do that in the back of the house. The front of the house is on, there's one kid right now, but hoping for the more, is on Church Road. So they want to have their backyard be their private spot. They're going to put a fence around it. And we are going to plant 27 trees in lieu of the replacement trees that were required. I don't know if you've got.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So this is the planting plan. We've got a mix of.
Can you tell us what sheet you're looking at?
We're looking at sheet L400.
There was a separate sheet submitted behind that plan set. It should be the
Okay.
last page of the plan set that you received.
So it should be the. If you've got I've got an extra copy if you'd like one.
We
I
included
found
it.
mine.
You found yours?
It's a plan prepared by Jonathan that we
Yeah.
included with our package.
Okay, so we've got a mix of large deciduous trees and flowering trees. I just got your list this afternoon through John Husback that you've got a new list that's coming out. And some of these are on it, some are not on it. I mean, so we've got oaks, tulip poplar, and a plane tree that we're using in the shade canopy. And then we've got a mix of natives and one non-native in the flowering species. So we've got Coosa dogwood, we've got some native dogwoods, red buds, and sweet bay magnolias. So the idea is to give the owners a large play lawn in the back, and then we're going to plant around the perimeter with the new canopy trees and the shade trees, and the flowering trees are going to sort of frame this new entrance that's going to be, we're going to pull the entrance drive away from the house to give it sort of a little bit more breathing room.
Or the list you're referring to has still not been approved by the Board of Commissioners. So it's just a courtesy that you have that. The
Yeah.
other thing is it's a recommended list. So you
Yeah.
can plant, you don't have to say, if this tree's not on that list, I can't plant it. That's not true. So you
Right,
realize
right.
that.
It's a much better list.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort
It's-
of up to date now, so thank you for doing that.
And your selections are very good.
Yeah.
And, it looks like there's a run of new trees where Abraham's Lane is,
Yes,
that's really a great idea too.
Yeah.
For screening purposes and.
yeah.
So any questions?
How big are the trees that you're putting in? What is their,
2.5 to 3 inch caliper for the canopy trees, and the smaller flowering trees are 8 to 10 and 10 to 12 foot B&B.
okay, thanks.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Great,
very
thank you
much.
very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
463 Barclay Road. Okay.
I think it is because it's grand looking.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I was asked to, my name is Jason Miller. I'm a consulting arborist, registered consulting arborist, board certified master arborist, a bunch of letters. I was asked to review the two trees in this case that needed to come out and express opinion on their viability.
Okay.
given the proximity of the trees, the subject trees, to the building, the proposed building and new sidewalk and all the other activities, I really don't believe that the 2 trees are viable and should be removed. Let's see if I can get that work.
Yeah, they should be able to zoom in on it. Or if you leave it at the size, we can zoom in on it with the camera.
There we go. Let me do that. There we go.
If you make it smaller, then we can see the whole, and they'll zoom in on it to make it bigger. Trish, can we make that bigger? Okay.
You're gonna have to move it more to the center.
That way. Go this way. All right, so, this here is a magnolia, saucer magnolia, and the other subject tree is a silver maple, codominant silver maple, multi-stem. Both trees are I can't see a viable way to preserve them and do the construction at the same time. My fear is that any attempt to do so will just result in a catastrophic failure of the maple in a few years, and the magnolia simply will just wane and die.
And are these the only 2 trees that you're removing?
That is the only 2 trees that I was made aware of.
Because realistically, they can remove up to 5 per year and not come to us.
They
So-
told me 2 trees, go look at 2 trees. I only found 2 X's, and I
Okay.
made 3 phone calls to find out about are you serious? There's only these 2? Okay, well, here we are.
Eileen, I think this is another one of the, because of the cubic yards of dirt.
Okay. Oh, that's the trigger.
Yep.
Okay. Right.
Eileen, all the trees are correctly marked on the plan,
Okay.
so,
Oh, that's good.
Tree protection looks good.
yep.
Okay. Any questions? No? Looks good. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
274 South Bryn Mawr Ave.
This was a project, again, Dave Fiorello from Omni. This was a project that was before the Shade Tree Commission back of July of last year, when we went in for land development approval for the construction of a new building on the campus. I think we're here tonight because we submitted permit plans for grading permits. I can go through the plans here. When we were here in July of last year, there was a couple comments by the Shade Tree Commission about providing some additional
Can you give
tree
us
protection.
just a moment to catch up?
Sure.
We haven't
no
exactly
problem.
found the right drawing, or at least all of us haven't yet.
Yeah, okay. I will.
When
be
you were
discuss-
last before us
Yeah, it's
in
this
July,
Yes.
we did talk about trees and,
We did talk about trees, we talked about tree protection.
Yeah, but
and I think we approved it.
You did.
So has
I-
anything changed in terms of?
The only thing that has changed, and that's one of the things that is, I don't know if that triggered the need for us to be here tonight, but we did make as we got through in the final approval, we did find out that the path that we had originally chosen for the water and utility extensions, we thought we could tie into an existing line at the corner of the new parking lot, which is at the corner of the existing soccer field. We had shown a line tying into here. It turned out that that connection wasn't viable, and the plans that you currently have show a new water line coming down along the side of the driveway and connecting to a new meter pit in the front of the
But that
building.
doesn't impact on any trees, right?
There is a tree that's shown on this plan as a hickory in the corner. And I noticed today when I was reviewing the plan that it's showing our utility lines pretty close to that tree. And I've suggested on this plan in red here that we shift that utility line over closer to the tennis court to stay away from the trees. That would put the utility line inside the fence of the soccer field and give us some added protection. Basically, that is the only change with the plans that we have tonight.
Yeah.
Right across from the stop bar shown here, it's a dot. It's identified as a 35-inch hickory tree.
Is this it?
Yep, right here. Right here. Check. That's a pretty cool tree.
Yes. I know there was a lot of tree removal originally when these soccer fields were done. That was an issue, and I think that was one of the ones that was recommended for saving way back when we did the original plans for this site.
So you're outside the drip line with the utilities?
We're holding the edge of the court or the tennis field, the soccer field as much as we can. We're inside the fence. We're staying away from that. We're doing our best to stay away from that tree as much as we can.
Are you showing tree protection anywhere?
I haven't shown tree protection because I have placed the utility line on the inside of the fence line that is surrounding the soccer field. So in essence, that 6-foot, 8-foot tall fence that's surrounding the soccer field will act as protection for the tree in that manner.
Right, because nothing's going to be.
Nothing will be
compacting
done on the
soil.
outside of that line,
Right.
of that fence line, correct.
Given the scale, that's got to be a good 40 feet. That's what it looks like,
It could be, yes.
because 1 inch equals 80 feet, so that's got to be at least 40 feet, maybe even more.
So there won't be any
Should be
disturbance in
good.
that area at all?
Well, they'll be running the lines
Utility.
through there, and we're running a 2-inch water line and a 4-inch water line.
All right, so I'm getting mixed signals here.
Okay.
If there's going to be a disturbance there and construction around there, there has to be tree protection. Now, you're saying something about the fence. If all the construction is on the other side of that fence?
All the work for the line will be
Through the soccer field?
on the soccer field side of the fence.
So right there.
Yeah.
The tree right now is on
Right.
the opposite side.
Okay, so my question again is, there won't be any disturbance or any construction around that tree?
Correct. That's what we're proposing.
I don't know, we shouldn't have, I don't know.
What
I think
don't you know, or what is the question?
Well,
I don't think this is that close a call. I mean, it seems like
Yeah.
by going in onto the soccer field, you're just way out of any.
And that
That
fence
tree's-
is going to stay up?
That's our intent, yes. And we will so note that
Well,
on
it
the
has to-
plans.
Yeah, it'd have to stay up.
Yes, yes.
But I think it's a permanent fence. It's a
It
fence
is-
around the soccer field.
It is a permanent fence. It's not a temporary fence. I mean, not
Right.
like, for instance, your tree protection now is a couple poles with some chain link.
They
We
don't-
have a full,
They're putting a sewer line through there, so they're going to.
It's not a sewer line.
Or whatever.
it's
Water
a,
line.
it's a small water line.
Small
But they're
water line.
putting it on the
And it-
inside of that
And it can
fence.
probably be trenched without the need for a large backhoe or anything to cut through there.
And you think that's the only reason, Trish, they're here?
Yeah. Because
As far as you know?
we approved this plan in
Oh.
July.
Steve, is that the only reason they're here?
Yes, sir. So they're coming back in for final approval. They
Yeah.
need to go through this commission, and then,
One thing, Steve, I don't know if you were here when I mentioned that we got final approval
Right.
of these plans back during land
Right.
development.
Right.
And now we're back at grading permit.
so that's why they're here.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't know if you remember, Jai was here.
Yeah, sure.
They're going for when I say final, the last item before they can start construction, the requirement of the grading permit is that they see this commission. So
Right.
that's why they're here.
So any questions from anyone? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Looks good. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Good luck.
Good luck with your project.
Thank you. Beautiful campus.
Yes.
941 Wooten Road? Okay, fantastic.
Some of you may remember this project has a little bit of history. We were in back in February for a grading permit for this, and the owner took down a number of trees without permission, even knowledge to myself. So we've come back tonight with the plans showing which trees were removed, and the owner's commissioned a tree replacement plan, which we've included as part of this, to replace the trees that were removed in accordance with the township criteria. The original plans had called for, the applicant is proposing construction of patio improvements, a driveway, the construction of a detached garage in the backyard of the house. He took the liberty of removing a lot of trees in the front yard. In here, there still remain a number of trees along the street. I put together a list of the trees that were removed. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7. I believe that 8 and 6. We need 14 replacement trees to meet the township criteria for the replacement trees. They are shown on the separate landscape plan. A lot of the work on the house has been done. The owner has actually done a lot of the site work without a permit already. I'm not sure what action the township is going to take. But there's tree protection up now. There's no tree protection up now. We're showing tree protection on our plan.
I know.
We'll have to make it a point to make sure that's up.
And the weird thing is, there's a lot of grading equipment in the backyard,
Yes.
and it's up against trees. There's, yeah, I went by today, and there's there's a lot of activity on the backyard with
Yes.
heavy equipment, but no tree protection I could find. So my question, seeing that, I didn't know where that was going, but my question is, there's trees that are shown in the backyard that exist now.
Yes.
Are those going to,
They are to remain, to my understanding, yes.
because it's interesting, a lot of them are ash.
That was a question that I was asked to bring up tonight in front of the board, because, yes, they are ash trees, and the question was, what's the board's thoughts on ash trees?
Well, either they're viable if treated, if not treated, they're out of here. They're not going to survive. If treated, they may, but you have to treat them every year, and I think a pro has to do it. It can't be a homeowner's remedy type thing. So the Shade Tree Commission would probably say a bunch of these ash trees are in severe decline. What's happening to them now is going to make it worse.
Okay.
It's just a.
Now, is that something that has to be replaced when they come down? Or is that because they're declining?
If a
they
tree is a
continue?
hazardous tree, that puts it in another category of replacement, but,
Didn't that ordinance pass, Steve, that
Yes, the board
they
did
made an
pass.
exception for ash trees? So there's no, the ash trees aren't covered under our ordinance
Okay.
anymore. There's a separate ordinance that exempts taking down ash trees, period.
I mean, the bottom line for me is frankly, going there, seeing this, it was like they're doing it, this is happening again. It's like the same problem that we had in February is happening now.
Yeah, I think the more pertinent issue is the tree protection is showing, they're working again, right? And there's
To
no,
my understanding, they're not doing any site work.
Well, they're busy inside.
They are busy inside, to my understanding.
what's the difference?
Well, they have a lot of equipment that they parked all around these trees.
Yeah.
And so Mr. Golis is right, so maybe work may be going on inside, but it's an active construction site, and there's high lifts, and there's all sorts of, so it's
Yeah.
not like just a pickup truck pulls up and goes in and does
Yeah,
work.
it
There's-
doesn't matter whether it's inside or outside, the tree protection has to be up. Because the tree protection is to protect from the construction vehicles, a lot of it.
I understand.
So Steve, probably that should be stopped again until they get the tree protection up.
So I can't stop the building construction, I can only stop the site work from an engineering standpoint, so that.
Even
not
if
to
they're
sound-
violating the ordinance and the agreement or the tree protection?
Not to sound bureaucratic, but, so the building code and the building permit is released under very specific guidelines. The grading permit is, so I can issue a cease order on all site work,
Yeah,
meaning, they couldn't do anything like that, but I can't stop them from working inside the house. I know that does sound bureaucratic, but there's specific
no, I'm
laws
not,
and rules.
yeah, I'm not, well, we don't want to stop them from working on the house, we just want them to stop them from damaging the trees and compacting the root systems with the construction vehicles.
Right, so I mean, you're here, Mr. Fiorello, representing your client and the applicant. So I think this board needs some confidence, something that says they're going to follow the rules, because you're back in front of them again, and I'm ascertaining that they don't have any level of confidence that what's supposed to be done is going to be done.
I can certainly pass that information on. I have done my best to present the plans in a manner. I don't have control over
Steve,
the things my client does.
Understood, you're in a tough spot.
I'm totally confused, okay? If we can't affect getting the tree protection fence up, that is what we're here to consider. Why are they here? In other words, if we vote this down because there's no tree protection, what would that mean?
It means that no site work, so they can continue work. Two things. So if I see, well, I'll go out to the site. If I see what we've seen in the past occurring, I'm assuming Dave here is going to notify his applicant and say all that we've talked about.
Yeah.
So I guess, Dave, everything here is hinged on how does the board approve this? Unless, I'm kind of caught myself, so.
If I can make a suggestion, I mean,
Conditional approval upon we come out to the site and see that the tree protection's up, and also perhaps a suggestion, a requirement for deep root feeding, root pruning of all the trees that have been impacted. And I'll send the arborist out there, and he can say there's 6 trees, and because damage has been done to a point.
if
Yes, right, absolutely. If
Right
those trees,
now,
the roots were impacted,
the
yeah.
owner does not have a grading permit, and we have to get approval of the plans to get the grading permit. So technically, he can't do any site work until our plans are approved. So if the board makes it a condition of approval that certain things have to be done, the tree protection has to be up before they get their permit in their hand, I think that may satisfy the requirement, because his office will be enforcing the site work.
Yeah.
He can't release a permit until there's approval here. The board can make their approval condition on certain things have to be done before the permit is in hand.
So, Mr. Fiorello, there's 2 grading permits here. There was one that was issued
There was one.
for the retaining wall. There was one that was issued for
There was one that was issued
reconstruct
originally.
building, walls, and now you're in for the new garage, patio, and improvements.
Correct. We had been in front of this board, or we had submitted an original permit for, in addition to the building back in 2 years ago, back in 2015. They started work on the house, and then they made decisions to improve the backyard. And then we came in with a permit, a second permit, or a revision, basically. So while, yes, they do have a grading permit, they only have the grading permit for what was shown on the original plans, which included the walkway out front and a building addition in the back. So technically, they don't have a permit for any of the other disturbance.
That's why you're here tonight. So maybe I could make a recommendation to the commission if I could. Conditional, so usually, we issue the grading permit, and then our inspector stops out to make sure the tree protection and erosion and sedimentation control is in. Perhaps we flip this and say, conditional approval of the grading permit from the commission standpoint, upon inspection, visual inspection, that the tree protection is in, since we had an issue before. And if you want to add something about root feeding, we can make that part of the grading permit issue. So it would be, your client gets the tree protection up, we go out, we say, okay, it's in, it's proper, it's per the detail. Once you meet your other requirements of the grading permit, it's issued. Part of that requirement is, at one point to do feeding, root feeding or something of the affected plants, and I would have John Hosback go out and tell us which ones. I mean, you see where the tires go over and all, and if that works for the commission, that's just a suggestion.
For me, that sounds acceptable. What do folks think?
I'm just sad about this because I don't have any confidence that anything good is going to happen.
Well, that's why, like I say, it's backwards in that we would require tree protection. We'll go out and confirm it. Once we know it's up, then we would issue the grading permit. Usually it's flipped. It's you get your grading permit and then put your, since we have an old grading permit, we have a situation, so at least that way we'll visually go out and say, tree protection's in, Hosback has made a recommendation on trees that should be given some type of fertilization or feeding. Okay, you've met all the other requirements on the permit from, stormwater standpoint, whatever, then we would issue it.
Steve, yeah, I'm confused on this tree protection thing about the tree protection. They could put tree protection in without starting their outside work, right?
So when we issue,
That's not a conflict, is it?
when we issue a grading permit, we issue the grading permit for a single lot, and the first thing Doug Meter does is go out and make sure the tree protection's
Right.
in and the E&S is in.
Right.
And then they start. So we're,
Yeah.
because there's been some concerns here, what I'm saying is we make it a conditional.
So it would have to be approved conditionally for them to start putting the tree protection up. They need some.
Well, yeah,
approval.
they could do that tomorrow and we wouldn't even have a conversation, but
Well, then
I don't.
Why don't we just table this until they get the tree protection up, till next month?
My suggestion is let's get them to get the tree protection up as soon as possible. So now my thought would be we'd be pushing it back a month. This lets the tree protection get up, it makes a grading permit move forward and get this project finished and whatever has to be done, instead of another month of possibly no action on that. Just a suggestion, sir, that's all.
I think that's a good point here where Steve said we can get this established so that we're not into the drier summer months.
Okay.
Can I make another suggestion? This has been going on since February. So, like you said, Steve, if everything's been parked on the trees, there's probably going to be damage.
Yeah.
So to fertilize and do all that is probably going to be a waste of money for your client. So instead of doing that, could we say in another year, if the trees don't survive, we could plant some more trees?
Well,
Or
we've done
put
that
some
before.
money.
We have done that before, that, we approve this, since there's damage done to the trees already, that you agree that
Would
if
it
the
be a
trees
matter of
don't make
putting
it, to put in
some additional
replacements.
escrow?
You could do that. We could actually have, during this process, have the arborist go out.
Yeah.
He could tell us, I think there's X%, Y, Z damage. If he sees that there's severe damage, which there may or may not be, I don't want to jump the gun, he could tell us, look, I think the tree's gonna have to come down, and we would just ask for replacement trees. Or Dave, perhaps we even just take that out of the equation and have the client show additional replacement trees for the just in case. We've done that before. When folks are close to other trees, they said, hey, understood we did some damage, we're gonna plant per your tree replacement.
That would be another reason to table this, so we can assess the damage already done to the trees.
I think if John goes out there, it doesn't matter.
I think
You're
we,
just holding people back, and there could be another month of.
we can get this done in short order, and they can get their tree protection fence up, and we'll have a report. I'm going to ask Trish to make sure we have a follow-up with Shade Tree. It'll be an agenda item, old business, follow-up on 940 Wooton,
Yeah,
what has
that'd be good.
occurred.
Yeah.
So if you could make sure you note that. And like I said, I think it's best, again, just a suggestion to the commission, to get this project going
Right.
so that it can be completed in a reasonable time and reduce any impact. The longer this drags out,
Okay.
you know.
All right with me.
By approving that, does that mean this new planting of replacement trees?
Well, we haven't
goes
looked at
into
that yet.
effect?
I think
We
that
have-
has to be discussed.
We have to look at that, so,
Okay.
we're not done, we're not quite done yet. We still have to look at the replacements. And,
But I think we're at the point now where at least we'll have the tree protection fence go up right away. John can do an assessment of the damage to the trees and either recommend feeding the roots, clipping the roots, or, like James mentions, that they're likely to die, and so therefore let's factor them in the replacement formula.
yeah, I agree with James. If it's compaction, the damage is probably done. And fertilizing roots that are dead doesn't help them.
Yeah, if it's been 2 months or 3 months.
There's no reason to clip them.
Yeah.
There's no reason to cut the roots. It's either the damage is done or it's not. And, just for the new people here, compaction of soil is almost the #1 cause of loss of trees, even more than bumping into them or what are some of the other main, it's one of them, it's main,
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so let's look,
And the tree replacement formula, that's on sheet 2? Okay, in the lower left-hand corner.
We have notes on sheet 2. We've listed the trees that are removed. We have the tree replacement formula, and we have the number of trees, replacement trees. It totals 26 replacement trees, with 12 being large canopy trees.
they show the species of the replacement. So do you have a planting plan?
Yes, there was a planting
yeah, that's
plan
right.
submitted.
It's L1
L101.
I am not the author of a plan, of
No,
a planting
so-
plan, and I don't claim to be qualified to be an author of a planting plan, but they had a firm put together a plan.
And the planting plan will be impacted by the health of the trees that are under study now.
I think if the board
Yeah, because-
agrees, yes, if the board agrees that, or if it's been determined that additional trees are required, certainly they will be supplemented.
Right. But also, they do have one 20-inch ash tree included, which they wouldn't have to.
Right.
Yeah, so they have an extra 3 trees at least so far, with 2 being large canopy. It's a start in the right direction.
That could cover
So,
something that
One
occurs
other
anyway.
large
Just
tree.
keep the plan as is. That's a great
Yeah.
point.
yeah. But we'll see more once John goes out.
Yes.
Now, Steve, just replacing these trees doesn't remove the potential for being fined on this, right? Based on the way this went down?
I guess conceivably, but, and that's this board's call to make a recommendation to that point, but perhaps the applicant can make amends for that more easily and quickly, and perhaps even better than a fine, we get trees. We, being the township, get more trees.
Yeah, I'd be willing to accept more trees, sure, but.
We're 3 up right now.
But the replacement would occur like this normally.
Well,
There would be that wouldn't involve any consequences for the
Right.
horrendous
So the-
clearing of this property.
The chair noted that we're up, so to speak, 3 trees to begin with.
Yeah.
So you keep that on the plan, and you're getting 3 trees, so to speak, more than you would be required. If John Hotsback sees that he thinks additional replacement trees are required, we'll note that on the, as before the grading permit's going to be issued, that would be a note on the plan. You need to provide X more trees.
Right. And many of the trees on this property are ash trees.
Yes, they are.
So if they're damaged, that's okay. It's just more so the larger pine trees and I think maple trees that are listed. And I'm sure, John, those are the ones he would focus on.
Yes, ma'am.
Dave, I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'm going to stop talking, but, because this is sort of getting under my craw a little bit, but around the boundary of this property,
Yes.
there's an exquisite wooden fence that has been put in. Very expensive, high quality. So these folks put in this beautiful wooden fence before they could spend some money on shade tree protection. Every time I think about it, it's like every step of the way, there's been this issue through this. And
I very
so I'm
much
having a hard time accepting.
I very much understand your concern.
Do you know why they haven't put up the tree protection fence?
No, ma'am, I don't.
So Mr. Fiorello's in a hard spot. He's an engineer representing an applicant, not responsible or maybe knowledgeable of the means and methods that occurred.
As the
during
engineer,
construction.
we are usually responsible for providing the plan that the client is supposed to follow. Unless we are contracted to follow up with the site, we don't.
Well, Matt, that's why I'm saying we shouldn't necessarily just waive the idea of the fine, okay? Because if we don't occasionally fine people for these kind of situations, we're not going to have the preventative value of the rules we have for the commission. And Steve, now, this always confuses me because I thought the fine situation was with the township engineer.
That's true. So it's at that discretion. And honestly, I check with the manager before I would issue a violation notice and a fine. We also look at,
But we recommend if we feel that an additional fine based beyond the replacement value. Now, that fine could be a contribution to the shade tree fund, or it could be.
but the fine does go to the shade tree
Yeah,
fund.
yeah.
That's noted in the ordinance.
And
So
in
what if
this
we-
case, I really feel there should be an additional penalty for what went down.
I agree with you, Jack. I mean,
Yeah.
gross negligence
Yeah.
to our ordinance
Yeah.
here continuing.
Right. The replacements would happen even if they were totally in compliance.
Maybe we could use the fine as an incentive, because what we really want is we just want the tree protection fencing up, and we want the trees that can be treated or cannot be treated, replaced. I think at the end, that's really the goal. And we want that to happen quickly. So could we use the fine, so to speak, as an incentive to have the owner take that action? And if the owner does not take that action, let's say within a week, then
Maybe
this is the fine imposed.
I'm going to backtrack on my original thought. I'm not to drag this out, but we can't get any answers from the engineer.
Right.
He showed us what his duties are.
Yeah.
Maybe you do table it, and Trish will contact the applicant and say the Shade Tree Commission needs to see you, is requesting you come. So we need to see the property owner or whoever's responsible for construction. Could answer a lot of your questions. A lot of things could be discussed. I know I don't want to drag it out, but we're directing a lot of things that really should go to the owner,
Right.
to a consultant.
Right, but the only thing is, though, I would hate to see this all wait a month. What we really want is because what we really want is action in the next week. We just
Well,
want the tree protection fencing, and we
Can
want
we
the,
determine to let the owner proceed and do what he wants to do with the idea that you will monitor what him doing, evaluate the situation, perhaps allow Steve to issue the permit with the condition that you still carry on a discussion about what the consequences would be?
I would say somewhat both. So we would ask for the tree protection fencing, we'd ask for the assessment of the trees to either be treated or replaced. We'd ask for the owner to come to the next meeting in May. If the actions are taken, we can decide what to do about the fine then. If the actions aren't taken, then I think it's somewhat clear to see this committee is going to lean towards imposing a fine if the owner shows up next month without them taken.
So the commission understands, in order to get their building permit for the new garage and patio and improvements, they can't do that without the grading permit. So that it's not a concurrent review. It's review of the grading permit, approval, then community development says, okay, we'll now review your building permit application. So you hold the cards to a point in that they cannot start construction on the next portion of what they want until that grading permit issued. So I'm just giving you some information. That's the process here. You know, our standard process. So if I've confused everybody enough,
Well, my suggestion is that we table this till next month, and we refer to Steve a recommendation that a fine be calculated based on the violations that have occurred on this property and continue to occur. And I don't see approving it while violations are ongoing on the property.
Well, because then there's no compliance.
Right, there's no compliance here.
And just so I'm aware, what kind of fines are we talking about?
Well, that's it, that's up to Steve.
Okay.
Steve would look into
yeah,
that.
and actually, I confer with my boss, who's the township manager, and he, you know, together we set the amount. I wouldn't even look at that until we have John go out. And I would suggest to Mr. Fiorello, before we get real deep, please have your applicant call me, have your client call me. I think it'd probably be good to meet on the site. I'll take John, I'll go out, and because I said we're once removed.
I think that's a great idea, Steve. The only thing that I'm requesting here is that perhaps that we get some type of approval somehow or another from the Shade Tree Commission that if he meets with you and things are worked out, somehow or another, we can get operations done earlier than have to put it back into the later period of time.
I personally am not sympathetic to that. He started the work ahead of time to begin with. He's jumped the gun on everything. Why should we go out of our way now to move this forward when his actions have been the complete opposite and undermined all our policies?
Because there's no
I mean,
harm to
from-
us. There's no
since-
pain for us if we give an approval and if all of these
What's that mean,
actions
Paul?
happen in the next week. Meaning, if the tree protection fence goes up, if John Hosback, assesses the trees that are there, they're damaged or not, and then next month, we could still have the owner come. Either the actions
Would
have
the
been
owner have to
done
come?
or they haven't
Well,
been.
we could request, so
I mean, if
we're,
it's not even pending approval, why would the owner come?
you're an advisory board, right?
Because the
So
owner needs other
we have to
approvals.
remember that. And we do need to remember that this is a future resident of the township, so they're going to be a resident, or they are a resident, I don't know. So maybe what the chair is saying, let's see what we can do from a staff standpoint and still ask the resident to come in next month. But I'll talk to the manager regarding fines. I think if I can meet with them on site, we can get tree protection up, we can get an evaluation of trees, and that can take place before next month, and then see which way the commission wants to go. I'd like to see those items addressed, and I'd like to see, so John looked at this once before,
Yeah.
so now that it's spring, maybe he'll be able to see more, since
Yeah.
trees should be budding and,
Right.
Okay, so the motion would be then conditional approval based on the inspection by our arborist, the
pre-installation of tree
reinstallation of the
protection.
tree protection, with the recommendation that the township engineer look at a fine based on the violations that have occurred already and continue to occur to go to our shade tree fund.
And meet with the owner, right, Steve? Yes, sir.
And the owner come in, right.
I kind of
Anybody
agree
wanna
with
second
that. I kind of agree with everything. The fine part, I can't go along with. I think we're here to,
Okay, well,
if
you
if
gotta
you
vote.
wanted to
You
say
gotta vote,
plant
finish.
trees,
yeah.
then I think that would be better than money.
We use
And
the
honestly,
money to
sir,
plant trees.
Is there money in the
We use the
account?
money to plant trees.
Is there money in the account, though? Because if there's money in the account, then they're not getting planted. If they go ahead and plant the trees, we get them right away.
That's the point I brought up earlier. So conceivably, if I could meet with the residents, and then they talk to Dave, and we show an addition, so we're up 3 trees, maybe there will be up 9 trees, that's instantaneous, as opposed to the shade tree fund and then some projects. So especially the fact that they have so many ash. So my request, if you want to move forward in that fashion, let me speak with these folks,
Do you
I will-
guys trust that they'll plant all these trees?
No.
Well, we're gonna escrow money for that. That's part of what happens in the grading permit.
Right.
So we do hold that money.
Yeah.
That is a requirement that he posts the money, and if he wants his money back, he has to plant the trees.
That's a pretty good incentive.
No. We need a
So-
new motion then.
So my motion would be basically exactly what Jack said, with the assessment of a fine. Like Steve said, he would review that with his manager. They would determine if a fine is appropriate or not. I'm okay trusting them to come up with a fine. My assumption would be if all of these actions are taken in the next week, there wouldn't be a fine, because then we're whole.
Well,
If
why
the
would
actions
there
are
be a
not
fine?
taken, then there would be a fine as a penalty.
Or perhaps when we meet, if I'm gonna make up a number, if the fine is, I'm gonna make it up, $3,000, that could be 8 trees. So in lieu of a fine, they note 8 trees that are not required per the replacement that go on there at, and John Hosback will look at the species genus and all that and make sure they're okay. That's also, and that's what sometimes when the people come in who are fined that meet with the manager, that sometimes is the outcome. So it is an out-of-pocket expense, but it's an instantaneously there's trees, at one point on the site.
But that 3,000 could also go to the shade tree fund and plant those 8 trees somewhere else where it may be more needed, right?
Absolutely, ma'am.
That's the thing about the
Absolutely.
Shade Tree Fund, that gives us the ability to plant them where we need them here, in our parks and things like that, so.
And I think this fine goes to the past actions of him
Yeah.
just deliberately taking
Yeah.
those trees down.
This is,
It's-
I don't
it's
see this
not
as a revocable
ongoing.
fine.
This is for past
We're asking for a
actions.
fine, period, not a revocable fine.
Right. I agree with that, Jack.
Okay, so it sounds like we have 2 proposals maybe on the table. One is basically a tree fence, assessment of the trees by John, and then treatment or replacement. Let me stop there. I think we're all aligned to that, right? Okay, so then it's really just the fine, whether we do a fine or not. I would propose somewhat of a hybrid. Can we leave that to the judgment of Steve and his manager, since they
I'd like to
typically
make a motion.
do the fines?
I'd like to make a motion,
May I
get this
finish,
clear.
please? Just let
Sure,
me
but
finish.
when the discussion's done, I have a right to make a motion.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would propose that we leave it to the judgment of Steve and his manager, because they typically are assessing fines across the township. I think they would be the best barometer of what is fair. And I'm okay if either the fine is monetary or the fine is in trees. For myself, I can live with it either way, but again, I'm okay with them doing that as a judgment. Jack, you had a counter proposal?
No, but I'm just saying that the only way I saw 2 proposals was the one I suggested was a fine point blank. The one you suggested was a fine that was revoked if they put up the tree protection.
No, what I'm saying, no, that's not what I'm saying. So what I'm saying, the tree protection has to go up, the assessment by John Hosback has to happen.
Right.
Regardless. The fine, I am saying, is at the discretion of Steve and his manager, meaning this committee does not decide if there is or isn't a fine. We do not decide the amount. We do not decide if it is trees or money. We let Steve and his
We never
manager do that.
Yeah. That's the way it
So
should,
that's-
into the ordinance.
That's what I'm calling kind of a hybrid. I think maybe that could make everyone happy.
And does his
Ginny?
direction include past actions? As
Yeah,
opposed
sure.
to just going, includes the past actions, okay?
I would assume so. Steve, can you confirm that? You would take that into account?
So there's nothing in the ordinance that says if you do this, this is your fine, like in our codes, folks, it's very specific, well, actually, there is an X dollars per day, and here's, so we look at the gravity of the situation, the severity, how many trees are affected, what could be a possible remedy, and that's how that number's come up with. If you remember, we find one builder over in Stratford like $60,000 because of what was the gravity of the situation. They were huge trees. So it really all depends, but because it's the manager or the township engineer. So the manager can levy fines, more so than myself. So I would meet with him and we would go through this whole discussion, look at the minutes, and come up with something appropriate if they wish.
All right. We all clear on the motion then? Anybody want to second it?
Just for Tricia's sake, because
Yeah.
this has to go in the minutes and it has to go
Sure.
to Gannett Fleming. Pre-installation of tree protection. Assessment of trees by John Hosback. Recommendation of a fine. Meeting with the resident prior to issuance of a grading permit. Leaving the 3 additional trees on the plan. Possible installation of additional trees. Remedy for any damaged trees per Hosback would go on the plan.
Right.
Yep. That's well summarized, Steve.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, does everyone approve?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Let's see. We have one more, 321 West Lancaster Ave. Hello, greetings again, Jonathan.
Jonathan Alderson, a landscape architect, and I'm here with Ben Marshall, who is the president and CEO of First Resource Bank. And we're here to present the new First Resource Bank site at 321 West Lancaster Avenue. I've also got photographs because I noticed on the survey the trees are not noted as to what they are. And the first thing you'll notice is there are 2 18-inch hickories on Lancaster Avenue. In our initial plan, which you don't see.
Jonathan, what sheet are you looking at?
I'm looking at the demolition plan, which is sheet 5 of 12.
Thank you.
So this shows the trees to be removed. And I'm just giving you a little background. When we initially developed a plan, our hope was to save the 2 hickories that are on Lancaster Avenue. This plan was presented to the engineers and to the Planning Commission, and because there's a need for vehicular circulation around the bank, and there are needs for the traffic to get off Lancaster Avenue, the plan had to change significantly in terms of the driveway access. I think I've explained that correctly. So these, unfortunately, are 2 hickory trees. They're 2 significant trees on the property that are going to need to be removed. They're 18-inch caliper. Along with that, there are some pretty messy-looking spruce trees that run up the side of the property line. They're the majority of the trees that need to come down, along with a 10-inch caliper maple tree, which is right against the house, which you can see there in that sort of a rather grainy photo. So those are the trees that are proposed to be removed. There's a total of 24 trees that are required for replacement. Now, the site is so small, we've got a planting plan that I'm just about to show you, that the owner is willing to give to the Shade Tree Fund in lieu of planting the trees. This is the planting plan.
Is that in our sheets?
This is sheet L401, which I think the engineer bound at the back. It's probably the last sheet.
Okay.
So, in a nutshell, we don't have tree protection fencing because we're basically
Taking them off.
developing the whole site. And we're showing the proposed quantity of trees, the trees to be removed at 14. I'm getting my numbers mixed up here. The replacement requirement is 24, and what we're proposing are 15. So we're coming here under the understanding that we need to contribute to the fund. The trees that we're planting 2 sycamore trees on Lancaster Avenue. We're planting a columnar oak tree we're very tight on space. So we've got 5 columnar oak trees, 2 in the parking islands off the front of the bank, and then 3 up the property line. Then there's a need for a retaining wall to get the grades to work, and we've just got shrub plantings along the side of that. In the back, we've got an evergreen screen against the neighbors. Initially, there's an arborvitae hedge back here that's getting removed, and we're going to replant with a mix of, we got some green giants and some leatherleaf viburnums in that, and some cherry laurel that are in that hedge. And then we've got 2 large shade trees back here, and we're using a willow oak there. And then we've got some red buds that we're putting in the understory. So that's our plan. We understand that we can't really get all of the plants squeezed on. The initial intent was to save the 2 hickories, but it was just health and safety that sort of drove us back into this corner where we had to remove those trees.
And the sycamores are going to be very adequate tree for the street.
Yeah, and there's some up the street as well as precedent, so it was trying to tie into that. I know it's not on your frequent list, it's an occasional plant that we should have, but I just saw that today, so I'll keep an eye on the number of sycamores that we start planting. Are there any questions?
Well, so what you're showing for the replacement, I'm not clear what you're showing here. In terms of are you breaking out the replacements that are going to go to the shade tree fund from the ones that are on the site?
Yeah, what I'm showing here, and I guess the table is a little confusing, there are 14 trees to be removed, and that equates in your equation to 24 replacement trees required. What we're putting in are 15.
And how many large canopy?
There are the 2 sycamores in the front and the 2 willow oaks in the back. And then, depending on how you construe it, we've got the columnar oak trees, which are a tall tree, but they're a columnar. And they're that way because we've got traffic that's going through here, and we're right close to the property line. And then in addition to that, we've got the flowering trees, the cercis. Actually, I think we've got 1, 2, 3 cercis. We've got the arborvitae in the back.
Okay, the Bath-on plant schedule here, right? Is that the replacement?
This plant schedule here?
Yeah.
This is what we're going to plant, yes.
Okay. Now, which of those are replacements?
The ones we're saying are the red buds, the sycamore, the willow oak, the regal prince oak, and the thuya.
And the what?
The thuya placata, the green giant.
Okay. So those are for the replacement formula.
Yes.
Okay. But not all those are going to be planted there, right?
No, those are all proposed to be planted.
Okay, they're planted.
But
Okay,
we're just
so-
acknowledging the fact we don't have enough room
Right.
to plant the other, what would it be, nine trees.
trees.
Okay, so so 9 trees will be the contribution to the shade
Yes.
fund.
Yeah. I should have put that on the plan, sorry.
Got that, Trish? Because that's not on the plan, so, okay.
And the removals out front, Mr. Norsini, do they need to be, are they street trees or in a business district? Isn't there something different with the ordinance?
We require street trees in Saldo, but really, all the applicants come in and comply with the shade tree ordinance. So and this is your chance to input on a type of tree you may wish to see. So we're fortunate with this applicant, they have, a registered landscape architect who is very familiar with our ordinance and a lot of the things you want. But so long as basically they're on the list, they're within compliance, the Shade Tree Commission can always request that perhaps a certain type be used, but they're,
No, they all look good, I just.
yeah, but
For
you
the
are correct.
contractor,
We note
it's going to
street,
be-
we note street trees in the subdivision land development ordinance, but we always go back to shade tree for what we do.
Gotcha.
Now, did you, of the 9 trees, how many of them are canopy? The 9 trees are the contributions for? Have you Steve, is there any calculation of the 9 trees, what that would be?
6.
It's going by
6.
his tape.
Yeah.
6 would be, okay.
Yeah,
And-
because
and
he's
the
planting
owners-
15 and.
Yeah, the owners
And-
here are really willing to contribute. I'm saying that for him, but he's right here, so.
Glenn Marshall. Yeah, we acknowledge that we are going to make a contribution, and you're going to plant trees in the park, and we're happy to do it. We just don't have a big enough site
Oh,
to
sure.
put the compensating trees in, so
Yeah.
it's kind of like, I hate to say it, give me the number, and we'll write the check and
So
plant
how
the
many
and-
trees can you not, are you unable to plant?
9,
So that's $4,500 to the shade tree fund.
yeah.
All right,
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's large canopy or small canopy. I think it's just a straight.
It was
500.
$500 for residents, it's $250 for
Right.
commercial spot.
So any questions from anyone?
No.
Okay, good. All in favor? Aye. Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so on the agenda, I'd like to go to what's labeled number 6, new business education awareness. This is actually the communication plan that Ginny, Joe, and James worked on. And Trish gave us a printout of that. Should have this here. We have a lot of things here. Okay, so Ginny, do you want to walk us through this?
We tried to collectively gather up everybody's comments from our previous meeting last month, and you'll see the 4 main areas with bullet points underneath on additional comments. Let's just start with number 1. Everybody wanted to increase the awareness of the residents on why it is important to have healthy tree canopy in our township. And here's, 4 reasons why. So, if anybody had any additional comments, we could add there, but this is what we ascertain, as I say, from everybody's comments: increase the property values, lower our utility bills, keep the streets safe, and help the environment, obviously. Does that seem good to everyone? Okay. And then number 2, we wanted to increase the awareness to residents on how to help keep and improve that tree canopy. So here were some suggestions. Request the township arborist to inspect and assure that your trees are healthy and less likely to fall during a storm. Obviously, he can make a recommendation if something was unhealthy and needed to come down. I don't know if that's okay for our poor arborist to have all these requests to go to individual properties or not, but it seemed like a good thought. He might be kept extremely busy if everybody took us up on that.
Or we may need some volunteer arborists.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there could be a liability issue on the township side, on the private property side, so I
Okay,
would
Steve.
respectfully request maybe that one. We go and look at trees within the township right-of-way, which we're responsible for. We send John to them all the time. But aside from the fact the township has to pay for his time,
Okay.
there could be he donates time for certain things, but there could be a liability issue that we're going in, we're noting trees, and I don't know if that, and the lawyer always tells me, don't get involved in, I'm an engineer, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, that's a
So
good
that's just a
point, Steve.
thought on that one.
Yeah.
There is an
Maybe we come up
expense
with a
associated.
different, the whole idea is that I think people are concerned since the recent storms and having the trees fall.
Yes,
So
had
rather
a
than
lot of
having people
surprises.
clearing their properties, is there some way that we can tell them, hey, this is how to increase your chances that your trees won't fall? And typically we know it's if your tree is healthy. So maybe there's a different action we can ask the residents to take. maybe it's contact an arborist and have your tree inspected.
And that's, and that arborist can then also give them a price for the work. So, you know, that's the impetus for the arborist to go out, right?
Okay,
Yeah,
that's a good thought.
that's a good idea.
Okay, maybe we can change the language that way.
Okay.
Good idea. B, consult us, us being the Shade Tree Committee, for help during your construction projects, to learn how best to protect your trees. C was sign up to receive a new tree. You know, we wanted to get that awareness out there about the spring and fall tree giveaways. D was help us protect our heritage trees, those being greater than 30 inches, by being aware again of our ordinance. E was plant trees that will thrive in this area, referring to our recommended tree list, so they get some awareness on all that.
And just noting that was, the tree list and the checklist were tabled by the board on Monday.
Oh, they were, why?
I think time. I think it was
okay.
4 hours plus the meeting.
Yeah, it was about 11:20.
Oh, my
and
gosh.
The
Yeah.
board did ask me, was there anything of time-sensitive material? And, I mean, as much as we all want to see this,
Yeah.
it didn't have to be done. So
Exactly.
that and a few other items got tabled also.
So that moved to the May meeting.
Okay, good to know. F was safely take down trees by referring to our list of approved contractors who are licensed arborists. And the last was to advise us of any unsafe trees, so we could send John out and
Could I add something to
sort of
that?
be our eyes and ears there.
Advise us of any unsafe trees within the right-of-way?
Oh.
Because again, we're getting back to an inspection of private property, which is really the property owner's responsibility. And again, there is a cost associated with.
Okay.
So I'm a civil engineer, but I don't go to your property and design a stormwater management system, even though I work for you, all
Right.
of you, and the township.
Right.
Same thing with the arbor. It's really dictated by, we do look at trees immediately within the right-of-way. But again, I think that leads to, hey, I think I have a tree back here. And not that we don't do that on occasion if it's considered, you know, it could fall on somebody's house. But I would
Yeah.
just respectfully request,
Okay.
we say,
That's fine, Steve.
let us know about trees in the right-of-way.
Should we define what the right-of-way is? I'm not sure if everybody's going to understand what the right-of-way is.
And of course, the right-of-way, we have like 5 different
Yes.
right-of-ways in the township. We actually have a list, and when John or Doug go out, they take the list and they say, okay, I'm on Malin Road, this is the right-of-way. They pull out a tape, and then they would say to the resident, hey, this is our tree, we're going to address it, or, sorry, it's not, you need to do so.
Okay.
Uh,
Is there a
What we
gen?
could- We
is
could
there a-
probably come up with some general language,
Yeah.
just to say street trees. And that way, just as long as a resident calls us, then we can determine if it's in the right of way or not.
I would ask that you do note the right-of-way issue, because that's the trigger for the township. So they should, I don't want to give them false hope, what people consider. So it could be street trees in the right-of-way. That's just a suggestion.
Well, and as the tree census survey work starts, that will be
Oh,
a
that'll be
key
helpful, yeah.
point to that, is making sure that we're just doing those trees. Trees in the
Yes.
right of way.
Yes, that's a good idea, too. Okay, so if we add street trees in the right-of-way?
That would be great, ma'am. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Sure. So number 3 is make the residents aware of the Shade Tree Commission activities, i.e. this tree inventory and anything else we want to convey to them that we're doing. And last is make the tree contractors, landscape developers, engineers, et cetera, that of the shade tree ordinance and list of trees, the fact that we have a website, and just in general, make the public aware that we do have a shade tree commission in Radnor and an ordinance. Did anybody want to add anything else to this list that we didn't capture?
What I would like to add is, I think this is fantastic. We have a couple of avenues here, and I would ask you to work, darn, she came back in, to work directly with Trish. So we have there's a magazine that goes out every month, and each department is allocated a little space.
Yep.
So you could do some or all of this, you could repeat it. So I think the Shade Tree Commission has fantastic intent. So what I would request is, if every month you have an item you want to put in, please do so. We can also post to the website, and with this active of a shade tree commission, you know, you folks are really taking the bull by the horns on a lot of issues. We'll gladly post under shade tree, and also it can go on the front page for a little bit, and then it falls off, but it will always be there. So if you folks don't mind, this is just a request, but you're doing great work and you're very creative. You could come up with something, you know, did you know, or, you know, frequently, however you wish to format it, but we do have 2 big venues to let people know, and boy, I think number 4 is one of the hugest of the huge, is making sure people know that.
And just a clarification, the ask of James, Joe, and Ginny was just to come up with the who and the what. And they already did a lot of brainstorming from what I saw around the how. So Steve, they can add your ideas to that list, and the how would be the future. And we could have them work with somebody in communications to, you know, come up with something that looks professional, that would actually get the residents to, you know, understand the awareness and then maybe take some of these actions.
That would be great. Much appreciated.
Any questions or any additions to what they've proposed?
No, I think it looks great.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, great, guys.
I
Good.
think so too. Okay, great. So we'll move to approve this and go to the next step, which is the whole how, and working with someone in communications.
Now, is that something we want for next month, or is that not going to be on the agenda any longer, or we're just going to be behind the scenes, a separate sort of committee doing this, or?
That's a good question, Ginny.
There was one thing I was thinking of maybe including in this, and that is, in terms of advising residents, I don't know if there's a liability issue here, Steve, but of advising residents some basic points of recognizing a tree in distress or
Oh, that's a good idea.
hazardous or whatever, so that just to as an educational thing. So, you know, they can see some signs that the tree's in trouble, to know to even consult an arborist about it.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack, I like that idea a lot. We could do tips to see if a tree is unhealthy, and also tips how to take care of your new tree.
Yeah.
You know, something along those lines. Okay.
Steve, this is is not totally related, but just a question we had. Who is do we have a new liaison from the Board of Commissioners?
I'd have to look, Mr.
Okay,
Miller.
because,
I don't know.
We were talking about that last meeting. It's important for us to know
Yes.
who
I
our
will find
liaison,
out.
if we have issues that we want to,
Yeah, and Jack, I reached out to one of the commissioners to ask them that. Like, could they ask at the next BOC meeting?
Yeah.
Because I don't believe they do have one, so
Yeah,
we're
I
asking
don't
them
know
to
that, I
appoint
mean,
someone.
we have a Public Works and Engineering, we have a Community Development. I don't know if there is one, a person assigned. I will find out. But you can always reach out to your commissioner of your ward or to the commission as a whole, as a advisory board.
Yeah.
You know, and
I
sometimes.
think I've done that, though, so I think we're okay.
I will find out if there is one, or who that may be.
Yeah, I think we lost him.
It was
With all
Jim
this-
Higgins,
Yeah.
and then he retired, and
Right.
I asked one of the board members recently, and they said, no, they didn't think that we have one, so then I asked them, hey, can you ask at your next meeting for a volunteer?
Right, but we are supposed to have one, right?
I will check, Mr. Miller. I don't know the specifics.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so to Ginny's question, she has a good one. Regarding the how, are we okay to basically empower, let's say, Ginny, Joe, and James to go out and figure out the how and to work with somebody in communications where there would be a minimal fee associated with it to create some materials? And then let them go ahead and make sure that gets on the website, that works with like the realtors. We had talked about that.
Oh, that, yeah.
I personally would feel a little more comfortable because I'm new and everybody
Yeah.
on our little group is new,
Yeah.
to bring this in
That's
front of
fine.
you guys after we create them, just to make sure, again, there's no liability
Yep.
issues, or that we're wording it correctly, because I think collectively, you folks that are more experienced have some great ideas that you might be able to bring to the verbiage of the message too.
I'm happy to do that.
Is there somebody in particular that we work with here in communications? Oh, is that the email you sent me, Eileen?
Yes.
That person's?
Yeah, Trish had given us somebody from Berkshire Hathaway with regards to, hey, a realtor contact. I also added another name on there of somebody who had volunteered. And then I gave you the name of a communications person that the Radnor Conservancy uses and seems to be
Okay.
quite pleased with. So I talked to her early on, but said,
Okay.
we need to talk to this committee first to see could we, proceed with engaging her.
Steve, I know we had asked you, do we have a packet that goes out to new homeowners?
No, we don't. So there's specific information that goes with, like, the grading permit. We put some of the things Mr. Golis had provided it in there. But if I could just jump back to the communications permit per person. So if you did wish to engage that person, we would need a cost estimate.
Yep.
And I'd have to go to the manager and see if I could get that approved. If it was approved, we go through the purchase order process, and then I could issue a purchase order. So and you can send that to Trish or me, say, hey, we talked to person X, and they said for us to do this, it's X money. And I would, so we don't have and that would come, I assume, from the Shade Tree Fund. So I'm not just concerned about that. It's just the process that we have to follow at the township.
Okay, it's good to know.
Yep. Yeah, so I think Ginny and the group can reach out to her, say, hey, this is what we want to do. What would it cost? And these are the places we'd like to put this type of information. What would it cost? And then we can bring that to the next meeting.
Okay.
Or whenever
Right,
that's ready, the
right.
next meeting or the June one.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep.
And Steve, regarding the Shade Tree Fund, we were supposed to be getting quarterly information on the finances of the Shade Tree Fund.
Correct, sir. You will have that at the May meeting. My apologies.
Okay, because that'll help us to decide whether we can look at something like that
Yep.
seriously.
Yep, no, makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Okay, good. Thanks, Ginny. Thanks, James. Joe's not here, but we'll thank him as well. Okay, then, looking at the old business, I would say, let's do the bamboo ordinance, and then let's do the goals. So A, then C.
The bamboo ordinance, Steve, that went to the commissioners, right, but it was tabled?
Correct. So I gave the solicitor what I received from the Shade Tree Commission. He packaged it in the appropriate format. I gave a summary and a couple emails of what really occurred. So the good thing about the
You gave a summary and a couple of emails to
to
the
you
commissioners?
folks.
Right, okay, I saw
Okay.
that, yeah.
So for the proposed tree species, it's a good thing that A, it would now become part of the ordinance, and B, the ordinance would be written so that it would only have to be changed by resolution. So if the Shade Tree Commission each year wants to add, delete, change, it's not the whole ordinance process, it's the resolution process. And the bamboo ordinance, you can see the change, how I think he made a couple of changes from a legal standpoint. So if all goes well, on May 14th, it'll be back before the commissioners for introduction. Following meeting would be for adoption, and after adoption, within 30 days, that becomes ordinance.
So I apologize, but when I went through this, the bamboo ordinance, Section D, the regulation, I think maybe that was accidentally left in there, and it should have been struck with the other text.
If you could show me what you're looking for, I'll send this back to the solicitor before it's introduced.
Yeah, if you look at page 3, Section D, it's called regulation, and you can see the text above it was struck out, which I think pertained to, hey, if you're going to plant new bamboo, this is what you need to do. I think the regulation was supposed to go with that, because the regulation, the way it's stated, doesn't really make sense in this context. Because Section E, pre-existing bamboo, speaks to everything you have to do with pre-existing bamboo. So the two would be in conflict.
So, just so I make sure I send the correct thing.
Yeah.
So Section D regulation would just be deleted in its entirety?
That's my, you saw the same thing, Jeff? Yeah.
Yeah, because I was looking for why pre-existing bamboo wasn't there. Now, it could be that regulation is effective for the pre-existing bamboo, and you just might need to put it all under,
But then it doesn't make sense.
it
Then you
doesn't
would
make
be
sense, yeah.
forcing
As long
residents
as we
to
have the
remove
rules, as long as
bamboo.
the rules on pre-existing bamboo are good, I don't,
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
don't
think
see
it-
that being there.
Yeah, I think it was just left in by mistake.
Yeah.
Okay. So if everybody's good with that, we'll delete section D. James?
One other thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
It does say any bamboo owner,
Yeah.
in those please.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this applied to the township as well, or is it just for residents?
No, I think it's the township as well.
Because bamboo owner, not that I'm an attorney or anything, but that doesn't include the municipality or like the state or, you know, those growing along 476 or something like that.
So arguably it does.
Yeah,
mean,
I
if
would
you
agree.
look
It would,
Yeah,
the
'cause
state is the owner.
Yeah, it says
Township
it-
is the owner. They own the property, they own the bamboo.
Yeah, bamboo owner references
Yeah.
any person.
Right.
Person defined underneath includes municipal corporation or agency, other group acting as a unit.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, good. Okay.
As I said, I'm not an attorney.
Unfortunately, I am.
Well done, Jeff. Okay, so is everyone okay with the bamboo ordinance, providing we strike section D? Okay, great. Approved? Okay. Okay, so now we'll go to the goals, the 2018 goals. I sent these out by email, and Trish gave us a copy of them tonight.
Which number is that?
It is C, 7C.
Ad hoc meeting to align on goals, okay.
Right, and we decided, instead of having an ad hoc meeting, we would do it at this meeting.
Can I just make one more comment? before we
Yeah, of
go there?
course.
Trish, one of the old business things is supposed to continue on the agenda each month, and it wasn't on there. It's been off the last couple months. The Philippone, Bo Connor, Lamasan tract. So that should continue to show up on the old business until we close it out. And I mean, there's not, if we could add that. at
Are you
the-
talking about the vines, Jack?
That whole tract, yeah, the condition of that tract, yeah. And if we could just put that at the end, I'll have a little report on that.
Okay.
Okay? Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so for the goals, I basically just took a stab at this. You guys could decide, hey, we're trying to boil the ocean here, it's too much, and we should whittle it down and be more focused, or you could decide, hey, something glaring is missing. So I just tried to be inclusive, and more so just conceptually. So the first one is implement the master street tree charter. That's what Matt is working on with regards to doing the tree inventory. Okay.
And just to let you know, I have the app. I bought a Series 6 iPad because the app required it, because the app has a bunch of stuff in it, that requirements for that because of GPS and photos. And so I started learning this. I had a lesson with John, started learning it. It takes 5 minutes to do a tree. That includes the GPS location, which maps the tree for you, and it also takes photos of the tree. And I got a Biltmore stick, which I can measure the DBH and the height of each tree. What I'm finding is it's sort of a two-person operation, because it would be great when I'm filling in all these boxes and things, if someone was yelling out drip line, doing the DBH, that kind of thing. It's amazing. It's I would say 4 times as sophisticated as iTree, because I was initially thought we would do iTree. So I think it's going to be really cool, and I think this iPad can go with, if we can get to a point where there's some survey teams, it's just not me doing it, or if we find some volunteers that we trust, or if we apply for a grant and get some money to actually pay somebody to do it, it'll go faster, because an 8-hour day you could do 40 trees, but there's plenty of trees to do. So, but I'm really pleased with it. It's very intuitive, and I could, if we have a pre-meeting, maybe in May, I can walk everyone through it, just, but so far, so good.
Great, thanks, Matt.
iPad it works on?
There's only one license per iPad,
Okay,
so that's part of the,
yeah.
Well, I thought we were going to look at different options in this, so you've already
oh, we,
made a preemptive decision.
I think we did as a Shade Tree Commission. I think we okayed the idea that we'd ask the township manager for this app based on John Hosback's use of it.
No, I didn't agree to that.
Well, it's done.
Yeah. Well,
What I would say is, let's look at previous meeting minutes, because I don't really recall. I know I'm definitely aware of the decision. I reflected it in the charter. I don't recall. I
it doesn't matter to
remember-
me. I'm just worried we're not going to be, it sounds like a great program.
I think what happened.
But I'm wondering,
I think what
can we
happened,
get
Jack,
through
what
the
happened,
whole
if I can
inventory?
say, what happened was, we had a couple catastrophic storms, and the township manager at a Board of Commissioners meeting got up and said, we are 25 years behind evaluating the health of our street trees. And I swear, within 3 days, he had purchased this. He had made a purchase of this app, so.
The township manager?
Yes.
Okay,
So, and I endorsed it.
yeah,
So maybe we didn't vote on it, but we're way down the road.
yeah.
In either case, the good news is, from what I've heard, it's very similar to the iTree app, but more powerful. So it does take more time, like Matt mentioned, and our township arborist, John, is completely on board and loves this thing. So I figure we kind of need him on board for this project to work, so that seems to work out well okay.
So how long per tree?
I did my American elm in my front yard in 5 minutes.
So guys, my suggestion would be that we cover this at the next meeting.
Yeah,
Because
I
I do think
agree.
we're going to run out of time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I'd like to show
We didn't
everyone,
really wanna
I'd like to show everyone how it
discuss
works too.
What's that?
We just wanted to look at them, not discuss them all.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Mr. Golds, maybe we can either do it on the big screen, or I can talk to Ian to see if, you can plug in. And then, because it is really cool, I gotta admit.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay, that's goal 1. So let's see. Goal 2 is basically keep the ordinance current and effective. I put Matt and Jack, and these are just suggestions, so don't worry about the names right now. We can figure that out later. We're implementing the recommended tree list. We're implementing the bamboo ordinance, and it would be helping residents to follow the ordinance. Number 3, I should have put serve our residents via proactive communication, because that's really what's detailed out below and basically what Ginny, James, and Joe worked on. Number 4, of course, is balance the budget, maybe even just be aware of what the budget is. If we want to, we could explore obtaining grants. Other townships have done that.
I sent you and Matt a budget request form that I got from Barley Van Cleef at Pennsylvania Horticultural Society. And she thinks we could possibly get enough money from the grant to actually do this whole census. But you would have to have a letter of intent to them by the end of this month, and then make an application. So that application process is live right now,
Okay.
and we could possibly get a really good grant for it.
Mr. Millerack, is there, a lot of times with the grants we do, there's a resolution that's required by the Board of Commissioners. So we need to look into that to see if that's a requirement. Because all the grants I do, there's actually a resolution where the board says we're on board. Is there any matching funds required with that?
I don't believe so.
Okay, because that's another part of the step, that the board says, we want to do this. And so I just say, take
Yeah,
a
if
look.
there's matching funds, sure, but I don't think there is. Yeah.
So that's all, because if we need to go to the board, we got to get it on the agenda.
Okay, well, just putting out the letter of intent, though, isn't even an application. It's just letting them know that you want to put in you might want to put in an application. to
Yes, sir.
Reserve your spot, kind of, to put in an application. Do you have a problem with that?
No, just usually all grant applications
Yeah.
go before the board, and the reason they go before the board is, A, there's a resolution that's attached, and B, if there's matching funds, only the board can say, hey, we're
Sure,
gonna
I don't
do
think
it.
there's matching funds, but I would think the board would appreciate this if we could get a grant for it.
I agree.
So,
So Jack, do you want to take the lead on doing the letter of intent by the end of the month? I think that's Monday.
okay.
Okay, that would be great. Okay. Number 5, partner with our stakeholders. I tried to be inclusive here in listing who I saw as our stakeholders. We could, of course, add to this list. 6, provide input on key issues. I listed some examples. Emerald Ash Borer, we've provided input there. Storm and electrical line concerns. I'm not sure what our input would be. We can't bury the wires, but maybe there's something we could offer there.
The Board of Commissioners started talking about that with the township manager
true.
this past Monday about some concerns about how cable companies were leaving jobs undone and creating some havoc. So I think that's something that should be on our plan.
Yeah, okay, good point. And I think just overall, I think what triggered that thought was, I think Radnor residents are concerned, given the winter that we've had and the number of times we've lost power. So either way, I think it's an issue folks are talking about, so we probably should have some input here. And maybe it is, hey, these are tips on how to assess whether your tree is healthy or not, or this is how to get an arborist input. Okay, and the last one,
Steve, are we still on? Because we're not getting anything on our screen here.
I don't.
Would-
Yeah, let me check with Ian.
Oh, okay, there we go. Okay.
And the last one, be green and efficient. Kind of the Shade Tree Commission, it seemed to make sense. And so by green, I meant, could we utilize less paper? We get these big packages of paper. I know it takes Radnor Township engineering, Trish in particular, maybe a day to put this together. Are there ways that we could be more efficient?
Would the commission entertain one of two or a combination of? So we tried to do this a few years back. It didn't go real well. So first off, we could just give you a link to a PDF to download, and then you could view it. And then if you wish to have something here, maybe we provide you 11 by 17s instead of the big full plan set, or no paper. But so we could give you a Dropbox link, that you could download to your computer, view them, make any notes, and if you want, actual paper here, it saves a lot of trees instead of that. And I can guarantee the applicants would be thrilled because they have to hand in like literally 27 sets of plans. So we could change that. Just something for you folks to consider.
Yeah, one thing I find that is on site visits, it's very helpful to have a big sheet.
That was the concern last time that when.
That doesn't mean we all need big sheets.
Right.
That's true. And you could determine that, next month, say, hey, here's what we'd like. We'll accommodate you any way you wish.
Right. and
I
that's-
also had suggested that we do flash drives and just 2 sets of plans instead of 9 sets of plans. So it's easier for the applicants to send flash drives. Now, the smaller residents, that might be an issue for them to put things on flash drives. But for the larger plans, I don't think that that's an issue for these engineers. They do it all the time.
They would love to provide a flash drive over a set of plans.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that-
and
that's what would be delivered to us then?
Well, guys, and that's where I'm thinking, we don't need to solve this tonight, but these are just all possibilities. What I was thinking, though, is overall, let's say we like these 7 goals, maybe we add on 8, whatever we need to do, but we would do a divide and conquer. So maybe there's 2 people in charge of number 7, and they just figure out how are we going to be green, and then they propose their ideas to this committee, and then we all agree, or we modify as needed. So it was just kind of getting big picture down, what do we want to accomplish this year? So are there things that you want to strike, or is there anything you want to add on?
I just wanted to make a comment that, I know that there's always I can feel the ongoing concerns about how much red tape we provide to people as far as our process. And I just want you to know that in the last 6 years, we have really reduced the amount of red tape. And that's not visible to you guys because, you haven't seen the previous meetings. But we used to be much more of a cumbersome process. So we have, even though it may still seem like there's a lot, we have definitely reduced the amount of red tape and obstructions we put forth in terms of moving these things forward. And I think of Steve, I wish Steve was here because he could, having been here all that time, he could reinforce the fact that we have reduced the red tape for the applicants. So
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, so if you think we have too much, we really don't compared to what we did, and to take any more out might actually get in the way of us doing our job. So we want to be careful reducing that red tape any more to rush things through.
Yeah, and the goal certainly, I didn't
Steve,
even
would
think
you
of
agree
us-
we've reduced red tape for the applicants in the last 6 years? As far as this commission goes? Made it a little easier to get things through?
I think there's been a lot of improvement. I mean, even on our side, we need to try to streamline things. So I think it's always a goal to try to streamline. Because on the residential side, these applicants are either going to be our residents or they are our residents. So in a year, they're not doing this. They might be sitting with you or, you know, so I like to always keep that into consideration. But yeah, I think we've made things quicker. I think we can always make it even quicker yet.
Yeah. I'm just for the new members, I just want them to know that we have improved on that, and we are trying to move things forward so that people aren't inconvenienced in their projects.
Yeah, good point. Is there anything that folks, again, want to strike or add on? Okay.
Maybe just since we have the tree fund, like the bank tonight, 4,500, how do we know, or where do the trees get planted? I'm new to this, so I'm not sure. Who makes those decisions?
I think it just goes into the fund until we actually, I think, do the tree inventory and then decide where the gaps are and then how to plug those gaps.
Yeah. You know, we're in the black as far as our fund goes. So there is no set amount that comes out. There is no set amount or percentage that has to be planted every year. Having more, like I would like to see us, the Board of Commissioners basically have to approve, let me know if I'm wrong here, Steve, but the Board of Commissioners basically has to approve if we decide to allocate funds from the Shade Tree Fund, because we're an advisory group. I know in the future I'm going to be asking for the commission to request the BOC to approve plantings for that Philippone O'Connor site, if we all agree. And then that would go to them, and we would request planting of, say, 30 trees there, where the trees are died or need to be replaced. And then they would approve that, and then we would work with the township in order to get those plantings done.
So there's, we do, like we talked about this many a year, so at budget time, that would be the time to make it, and we did that last year, right? There were certain amounts the Shade Tree Commission asked for. So that's the time to do that. But the Shade Tree Fund funds the tree giveaway, things like that. It is used. But absolutely, you can make the request for, whatever planting you want to, they're easy line item requests. Obviously, I don't approve them. I will bring them to the board in our budget.
And Steve, that's one thing I just want clarification on. So like the spring and fall tree giveaways, are they funded by the township, or are they funded in part by the Conservancy or Chanticleer?
So I'm not involved with that anymore.
Okay.
I know in the past, the Conservancy was part of it. I don't know the split, or if we fully fund it. I remember the Conservancy lining up the trees. I also know that we had paid for that because there was like a deposit, and so I'd have to find that out. I believe
I was on the committee last year, Steve, and I think we paid all of it.
I think you're right,
Yeah.
Mr. Miller.
And I think you're the one that they offered, the Conservancy offered, and you said, no, we'll take care of it.
So,
and I don't know whether that helps us keep the control of the process, or.
And like I say, I'm once removed now, but
Yeah.
I believed we paid for that. But there's,
Yeah.
a myriad of projects you folks could bring forth.
And like I said, we were supposed to get our financial statements for the shade tree fund. We're supposed to get that quarterly. So we haven't had that quarterly, so Steve said we'll get that for the next meeting. So we could.
Yes, sir.
We could take a look at what's in the fund. And then, then you take a look at that and you decide, is there any other information? Jake Abel, when he was on the commission, now the Township Commissioner, was really getting into that. And it's certainly an area that would behoove us to have some scrutiny into, to look at, to see the deposits that have come in and the expenditures and what we have, what the pool of money we have we can use without depleting that fund to get plantings done, because we have a lot of areas, even these street trees, Steve, they're not replanted automatically, right? All these street trees that are being taken down that are on this list, they're not.
By the township?
Yeah, they're not replanted.
No, so what we did in the past was, anybody who's had a tree removed by the township, when we did
They got a letter.
When we did the fall
Tree
tree
planting.
thing where it was like a $25 for a tree, we would send them letters.
Right.
To say, hey, would you like to do that? So that was the basis. I don't know if we did that last year. It might have just been open.
Right.
It's always open to anybody, but I believe those folks were approached because we did remove it. But there is no consistent replacement plan for trees removed by the township.
So, just to answer your question, that's an area we need to connect the dots better. We don't want to deplete the shade tree fund, but we certainly want to be enhancing the canopy of the township to the extent we can without depleting the shade tree fund by allocating funds for plantings. And it's something where, again, because there's been a huge turnover in this commission, we haven't coordinated those, connected the dots. So it's an area where, with this new active commission, we can connect the dots and really make a difference in terms of not just making a census of the trees, but actually filling some of the holes in where where they need to be filled.
Yeah, because James, I agree with you. Like, one of the goals probably should be plant some trees.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think, kind of looking through this list, I think that's like what's meant by number 1, address the gaps, and 3E, like the spring and fall giveaways, get residents to know about it. And we could always increase the size of the spring and fall giveaways.
Yeah, I think last meeting, there was a question about who paid for the spring
Yeah.
and fall giveaways. So if it's coming from the shade tree fund, that's good. It's great.
Yeah, I think our number 1 goal is to enhance the canopy, and protect and enhance the canopy of Radnor Township. That's what we should be doing. And in that sense, one of my goals has always been to measure our canopy. And I've been dealing with Barley Van Cleef about that, to get in touch with the Forest Service to find out a way. It's my opinion our canopy is on the decline in Radnor, based on anecdotal.
But I think our inventory will show us that. We'll
That's
come
just
up
the
with a
streets.
baseline. But I think from a township perspective, that is what we can do. I don't think we can.
Well, we have parks too.
The parks are included in the master charter. So they're in there. What's not in there are like people's backyards. That's not in there.
Well, I doubt you're going to be doing a census of Bytham Park. Right?
Sure.
No, the
That whole
parks
part.
are the last phase.
but
Yeah.
they're going to be part of it.
Right, because we added that to the charter, which we also have a handout of here, the colorful blue one. But, so I like what you said, Jack, just even as our overall mission, enhance and protect Radnor Township tree canopy.
Right.
And then maybe these are the goals underneath that. Okay. Let's just go around the table, I guess. James, anything else to strike or add?
No, as long as we plant trees.
I hear you. Jeff?
Nothing to add.
Okay.
Looks good.
Okay. I'm good. Jack?
Good.
Matt? Ginny? Okay, well, that was easy. Okay, so I would say we'll settle on these, and then I know it's getting late. Maybe folks can think about it if you want to volunteer for any of one of them, but we'll try and do a divide and conquer. Okay. Maybe, Trish, maybe you'll want to even be involved in number 7, be green and efficient, since I'm sure you have some good ideas. Okay. Since it is late, is there anything else under old business that folks wanted to cover?
I just wanted to say on the La Masan Bo Connor, Philippone track that the Radnor Conservancy again had a little cleanup out there, where volunteers came out and to clear the vines. Yeah. We didn't get as many as last time, but yeah, we did what we could. And Steve, I wrote a letter to you and Bob and asked if we have any plans to continue work in that area, and to give me a response in writing if the township had any, so that we can look at, is the township doing, in their plan, their parks plan, maintenance plan, to do anything about that area? And then we can look at other types of support more efficiently, rather than try to take on the whole thing ourselves.
I'd have to, so Steve McNellis, the interim director of public works, park maintenance falls under him. I'd have to defer to him. I don't know what his schedule is or what he has planned.
Did that letter go to him?
I'd have to check. I don't know. But if it went to the manager, that's, well, you're starting at the good spot, so.
Yeah, but as our liaison here, can you check into that?
Yeah, I definitely will.
Yeah, because
And
I did.
we'll
I
get
did-
you a response.
I think I addressed it to both you and Bob. And I got an email back from Mark Dominic that the staff did go down there for like 4 or 5 days in the winter.
Did, yeah.
Yeah, and I went down there and I saw there was some vines removed, but not all of them by a long shot. So I'd still like to know if there's any, future, if there's more plans to address that other than that one went.
And I will check with Steve. I guess that's his bailiwick, so I don't want to speak for him.
Okay.
For what he's got on board.
Okay. So anyway, it's a little progress down there. We'll take a look at how it looks in the spring, how many trees died this year, and quite a few did, I know, I can tell already. But and that I would like to get in the early part of our census, like even maybe as a almost like a test case census, because we're focusing so much attention on that. Yeah. Okay.
So folks, I have to leave because I need to drive to Maryland tonight. So I'm okay if you want to adjourn the meeting. I'm also okay if somebody, Jack, if you want to lead the rest of the meeting in my absence.
I'm not, I
Let's
really
just-
haven't been, all we have left is the hazardous tree report, right?
Folks, do you want to adjourn or continue?
Well, we have to decide on hazardous, at least vote on the hazardous tree.
Okay, then I'll let you do that.
Okay.
Thank you. See you.
Did everybody get to look at the hazardous tree report? Yes. Okay, any questions on that? Everything looked okay? Tree is 100% dead. Okay. All in favor of approving the hazardous tree report? Okay. And looking on the agenda, I think that's it, except the only other thing on there was the list of trees taken down by the, okay? All right, anything else?
Steve, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
On the website, it lists Shade Tree Commission as having one vacancy. Is that possible? I thought we were full up.
Probably hasn't been updated. Yeah, we're full.
We will take care of that. Thank you, sir.
Somebody on the, they said at the meeting as well.
At the Board of Commissioners?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think we have a vacancy, right?
I don't see how we.
You want to double check?
We have Mr. Golis from PC. Our Park Board representative,
Right.
that might be our vacancy.
Oh, really?
No. Claire,
Claire Gerton leave?
so then,
Oh,
so
just
then
today.
then that's our.
Yeah, I think we're full. I think we're full. Okay,
We'll make sure that's a.
okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.